Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the moderator of the next session, James Kanter.
Where did everybody go?
A very warm welcome to this panel titled Strengthen, Safeguard, and Simplify, the EU's Path Forward. I'm James Kanter. I'm the editor of the EU Screen Politics podcast, and it's my pleasure to moderate this session. Let me frame this session by saying that externally, the EU faces a changing world order. War is raging. There are various threats from Russia, China, even the United States. EU enlargement and investment may be part of the answer, but internally, EU decision-making can still be slow and inefficient, and democracy is increasingly vulnerable, and that is weakening the EU. A core question is how the EU can be made fit for purpose for the 21st century and stay true to its values. And to talk to this very important point, it's my great pleasure to invite members of the panel on stage. Martin Dvořák. And we'll just pause for a moment.
Okay. I hope he's okay.
Yeah. We're just looking after a gentleman who fell over. I think he's fine. So we'll continue. Bjerre. Maida Gorčević. Magdalena Sobkowiak-Czarnecka. And James Waterworth, our panel. Now, we're going to aim to keep this session pretty lively, so please forgive me if I interrupt you. We want to make sure we hear from everyone, and we'll come to questions, all being well, after about 40 minutes. Martin, hello.
Hello, James.
Czechia has long been a clear advocate for EU enlargement.
Yes.
But how big are the political obstacles right now?
As usual, they are big, of course, and you are right. Czechia is for long-term supporting and promoting the enlargement, and I have to be fair. I am an honorary citizen of Kosovo City, so I'm maybe not very objective, but really I'm a huge supporter of Western Balkans ambitions, as well as Ukrainian and Moldova, of course. Why we should ask for enlargement is, from my point of view, clear. We will build up a bigger marketplace, stronger entity which will be able to protect the shared values. And also, I think, since we are facing or witnessing the aggression of Russia against Ukraine, it's more important and more visible that we really need to build up some kind of bigger, stronger entity which is able to protect the shared values.
So that's the strengthened component, but the political obstacles, Viktor Orban and Hungary, I mean, how does this move forward while Orban and Fidesz are in power?
Do you ask me whether I'm afraid that with enlargement and adopting some new members, we can build up a new Orban's trouble? I hope not.
Be careful what you wish for.
Yes, of course, but there is nothing sure, nothing clear with the other old members. We can see the development and the political development in many European countries. They are also on the way to more urban politics, national conservative issues, whatever, how we will call it. So we are not able to protect ourselves from internal movement, and this is the same. Or maybe bigger, I don't know. But still, this risk is here, and maybe we can discuss later on whether European Union is able to change a little bit the internal procedures how to vote.
Right. We'll certainly get to that and if other panelists want to come in on that a bit later, that would be super. Maida, I just want to come to you immediately because let me put it this way. Which country should be next in? Montenegro before Ukraine? Or at the same time as Ukraine? What are your thoughts?
And you're asking a representative from Montenegro. Of course, I will say the Montenegro. But let's be honest and let's go by the rules that the European Commission wrote. Let's go by the methodology. Let's go with strict and fair methodology when it comes to the whole process of the integration. Whoever comes first when it comes to closing benchmarks, whoever's fulfill what is our requirements must be first and the next member of the EU. So in that way, I'm speaking now not only as a representative of Montenegro, who is also leading the whole and coordinating the whole process inside my country, but I'm speaking as someone who needs to motivate the others. At this phase,
exactly,
you know,
and that's very important because we brought up the issue of Viktor Orban and Hungary, but in the case of Montenegro, we see that Croatia is not exactly being cooperative.
I wouldn't say so, like that way. I think that everyone is very cooperative, and I think that everyone now is taking looking at a wider picture. If we are speaking now about everywhere is someone who is for blocking some other country. And I think that when it comes to this technical part of the closing chapters and becoming closer to the EU, I think that bilateralization of the process is not helping anyone. From that way, I know that there is also a non-paper which we are speaking from that is coming from Slovenia and Germany when it's coming about the opening of the clusters and opening of the chapters with the qualified majority voting. I think this is just fine. But when we are speaking about the closing of the chapters, look, we are in the final stage of the closing chapters. We're in the final stage now as Montenegro. I think that all 27 must vote for closing of the chapters, and I think this is the only strict and fair thing. So if you are thinking like that way, I think that the good thing is not to see anything as a part of the package. Let's motivate by the results, and let's also think through the results not only by the European Commission, but also by the member states as well.
Great. And Magdalena, Maida brought up this issue of the institutional reforms that are needed, and a lot of people think this is a priority. If we are to have an enlarged EU, from 27 to somewhere in the 30s possibly, we have to consider getting rid of the veto, right, on foreign policy. We have to consider changing the composition of the Commission, or do we?
For this moment, I don't see any need for changing the treaties. So just to close this question, just at the very beginning, it's not a good time for changing treaties. We are in a very unstable times globally, and it's not a time for deepen reform of the EU. Of course, there is an issue, especially with one country who is trying to block, especially issues about Ukraine. But I think as a Polish presidency, we performed really well because of Agnieszka Bartol, our permanent representative. She was doing very great job on the negotiations, and we finally agreed, especially on the sanctions. For example, we even did the agreement of Hungary. It's not the same issue in terms of enlargement, and this is for sure something that I think Marie also will be I'll be passing the ball to her as they are taking the presidency. But I don't think it's a time for very digging reforms, but we need to also find a way to speed up the process. And I think we also showed as a Polish presidency that the speed up is possible. We did together with other member states amazing job about the defense capabilities programs with the SAFE. That was the fastest negotiations ever. This is the same that we are doing on omnibus packages. So it is possible.
We'll definitely come to that. And what's so interesting is that it's so hard for people to discuss treaty change because nobody wants to discuss it. It's really a big obstacle. And I just want to make clear for the audience, that's what we're talking about. It's this thing that if you're in Brussels, it's almost like an atomic bomb that you've let off in the room because nobody wants to do it. It's so hard to open the treaties and readjust the way that the EU makes decisions. However, with enlargement, we'll have to see whether it happens. I want to come to you, Marie, because, of course, you will be managing the next revolving presidency of the EU. Perhaps you can address what's already been said and give us a sense of how the enlargement files might move forward, particularly with Montenegro and Ukraine under your presidency?
Well, first of all, I think that Maida was very objective because Montenegro are actually leading when it comes to enlargement. We're not talking about opening clusters, opening chapters. We're talking about closing chapters, and hopefully we will be able to do that also during our presidency. I think the whole enlargement agenda has gotten a new momentum. We have not seen this since, I don't know, the 2002 big enlargement. There is a new momentum for enlargement because we're not just talking about enlargement in the perspective of prosperity, better economy. We're talking about enlargement also due to our security. Russia is a real threat, not only to Ukraine, but also to Moldova with misinformation, disinformation, even vote buying, and also on West Balkan. This is about European security. We have to move on with enlargement.
And concretely, under your presidency, where will we be by December 31st?
To be honest, I think we should open. It should be merit-based because the candidate countries, have to live up to the criteria. Europe will not be stronger if you do not make the necessary reforms. So that is evident. But right now, Ukraine, Moldova, also Montenegro, Albania, and other countries are making those reforms. Actually, when it comes to Ukraine and Moldova, they are so ready that we could open all clusters. That would be within merit-based. And if you just ask me, I think we should open all of it.
Very interesting. Now, James, I'm going to come to you, but I just want to pop back to Martin because he had raised this issue of whether we bring in new member states purely on merit with the old so-called Copenhagen criteria, or whether at a time when history calls, we perhaps look at enlargement through a more strategic lens, whereby the greater good is served by getting our new friends inside the tent. Martin.
Well, it's on me again. I guess.
I know, I'm coming to James, but I want, because we raised this. So the question is, do we stick by bringing in new member states on merit, or at a time when history calls, do we bring them in as soon as we can?
There is no way to skip the merit-based criterion. We cannot afford to invite someone who is not able to share our shared values and to fulfill all of the criteria. On the other hand, mentioned several times already, the geostrategical or geopolitical situation is completely new, not only because of Russia, also maybe because of development in the United States. And we need to build up a very strong partner for the big players like US, Russia, China. So that's why we are trying to help them as much as possible, to invite them, to keep them on our side. But on the other hand, we have to ask them permanently and always, first of all, you have to fulfill your homeworks, you can do what is necessary.
Okay, so no changes.
No changes.
Okay.
There's no way. I guess no one will.
There's no way, trust me.
I'm going to come to James because we are going to move on now to tech sovereignty, which is another way of thinking about how we strengthen the European Union. And let me put it this way, James. I mean, you represent Amazon. Can a giant US company like Amazon really be on the side of European tech sovereignty?
Not only can it, but it is. And I would take and expand your concept from tech sovereignty to sovereignty. If we look at the operations of Amazon in Europe, hopefully many of you may have been customers and you may be familiar with pressing a button on a screen and receiving a parcel at your door. What you may not be familiar with is what goes on behind the scenes, which is around 150,000 Europeans working in more than 300 buildings of ours across 21 European countries, contributing to Europe's productivity, Europe's resilience, Europe's competitiveness, and everyday operations. The resilience, whether that's helping Europeans get through a pandemic, whether that's helping Europeans recover from natural disasters, earthquakes, floods, wars on the eastern frontiers of Europe by providing the necessary kit, or whether it's by providing the latest in technology, whether that's robotics, whether that's electric vehicles, whether that's AI, all of these are necessary ingredients. And I would say the key determining factor is a company focused on its customers? If a company is here and focused on delivering for its customers, whether they're governments, whether they're man or woman in the street, whether they're European enterprises, and they're able to reinforce those companies or those customers in their quest for daily living standards or their ability to compete around the world, then yes, they are absolutely able to contribute, and that's what we're doing. That's what we're investing for.
I mean, if I'm right, Amazon is proposing something like a European sovereign cloud for your own affairs. But I hope this is not too technical, but there are a lot of people who say, okay, that's good, the data will be in Europe. That sort of is aligned a little bit with European tech sovereignty, as it were. But there are concerns about a company the size of Amazon having control of a tech stack that would still give control over data centers in Europe. So again, I would ask the question, really, can there be European tech sovereignty as it has been conceived, or is there just an inevitability when it comes to working with American giants like Amazon?
The key way to create both investment certainty for any player, whether large or small, whether coming from Poland, whether coming from Denmark, whether coming from the United States, is have objective criteria. If you have particular policy needs, something citizens or governments or enterprises are concerned about, then you write rules and you expect people to comply with those rules. And that should be the same for Amazon as it should be the majority of other companies. So we are very proud of the way we already enable governments or companies to choose where they store their data. This is already a choice for them. We are very proud. They may wish to store it in their own country, or they may deliberately wish to store it somewhere else. So this is the case of Ukraine, for example. So one of the things that was targeted in the early days of the war was the government's ability to administer its population, with land registries, its qualifications, all those things. And we were able to move the data outside of Ukraine to our data centers in Germany in order to keep it safe. So that control is already there. And if there are further controls that need to be established, that's what ladies and gentlemen are here for.
Very interesting example. Marie, I'm going to move back to you on this now that we're talking about digital. The Danes have said that this cornerstone of EU digital regulation, the GDPR, the General Data Protection Regulation, needs an overhaul as well. Mm-hmm. But maybe you can speak to that, but also speak to the question, how far can simplification go in digital, climate, environment, labor standards, supply chains? Aren't we trading away the EU standards that we agreed to?
No, we do not. The thing is that we have been regulated way too much in Europe. In the last Commission period from 2019 to 24, we had 13,000 legislative acts, whereas in US they only had 3,500 legislative acts. It has gotten too burdensome to do business in Europe. The Danish company sees it as well. I cannot visit a Danish company without they telling how burdensome it's gotten. It's especially.
Isn't there a real problem? High energy prices and a more complete single market.
It's for instance CSRD or CS-DDD. That's very burdensome. It's also the GDPR, which actually hinders tech innovation, AR innovation. It has gotten too burdensome, and we have to remove some of these regulations, because the thing is, if we keep regulating to the extent that we do today, those businesses that are really good in tech and green energy, green transition, green technologies, they will end up closing. So in order for us to do more for the environment, to do better on consumer protection, because we have a lot of good companies with good ethic, with working on the right values, they will end up producing elsewhere because it's too burdensome. So we really have to deregulate, remove rules when it comes to CSRD and also GDPR.
Thank you. And Maida, on digital, let me put the question this way. How serious a threat to Montenegro's desire to join the EU are pro-Kremlin online influence campaigns with anti-EU narratives? Hybrid attacks from third parties, read Russia, they seem to be aimed at swaying public opinion against EU membership quite a lot of the time. Can you speak to that?
First of all, I would like just to clarify, 80% of our citizens are supporting Montenegro to join the EU. And I think this is a number where also some member states doesn't have this kind of support for the EU. I think this is really something that makes my life easier if I'm speaking about as a Minister of European Affairs. But from the other hand, also I must say that all political parties in Montenegro are for the EU agenda. And this is also the easy part, because everyone is on board while we are working on the reforms. But still, yes, we are dealing with a lot of hybrid threats. We are dealing with a lot of disinformation. We are having also some of hard campaigns against the EU agenda. I'm certain with every step forward the EU, even the fact that we are working very hard on the education, that we are working very hard on the regulations, and that we are having strong partnership with our EU partners, still there is a lot of work to work. I'm certain this is not only the problem with Montenegro, this is happening in the Western Balkan. When it comes to the hybrid threats and when it comes to the cybersecurity, this is a worldwide problem, and this is something where we need to connect much more and to have.
But do you have the tools to make sure that that 80% that supports EU membership stays 80%?
The key is in communication, how you communicate every step that you are doing on this way, because it's not an easy thing to explain what are the reforms and what are the benefits from the closing of the chapters. Beyond us, we can understand what it means if you close any chapter, but to the citizens, they are seeing what are the things that they should give up on. So it is not that easy process while you're doing this, and this is something that was during the Poland that they had problem, or any other country that were joining through their period of time while they were into this process. But the good thing is that Montenegro, since a couple of years ago, also opened cybersecurity center with the EU help of our partners. And this is something also where we are strengthening our institutions, more communication with our citizens, and also better communication in partnership with the EU member states.
Thank you, Maida. And Maida mentioned that this is, of course, not exclusively a problem for any single state. And it also, in the case of Czechia, Martin, seems to concern China. And we've had a recent story where information has come to light about the Chinese allegedly hacking the Czech foreign ministry. So this is very real for Czechia.
Yes, I know. Yes, I know. You know, the trouble is that, of course, I don't have all of the necessary information. And if I do have any, I can't share it with you. But anyway, I think it's a very clear example or proof that we are under permanent attack. Mainly, I believe, we are under attack led by Russia, but this example is showing that it's not only Russia who is trying to take the information, they are not for them, and also somehow to improve their influence on the public opinion. What is going to happen? It is still an ongoing process, and we are witnessing the results, because the support, I'm really a little bit jealous to Montenegro. If you have 80% of support, we have about 50, and we have just keeping it and are happy to not let it fall under the 50%. So we are facing a very strong battle, which is not visible, and many people are not even able to understand and to accept that it's going on. And it is on us, on the government, on medias, on public opinion makers, etc. Let me say one sentence more, and it is, somebody told me once, in case that will be a Nobel Prize given for skepticism, then every year Czechs will have a new Nobelist. So I think we are one of the most skeptical nations, and if somebody is somehow destroying your belief in something, in democracy and freedom, and working European Union, then Czechs are very, very easy to be touched.
It's so interesting. What you're reinforcing there is that all over the world, the public can be preyed upon by hybrid information attacks. Some nations perhaps more than others, but what you've pointed out, what you've pointed out, it really brings home the idea that when it comes to the information space, this is as much about technology and some of the stuff that I was talking to James about as democracy, right? Yeah. So, Magdalena, can I turn to you? When we do talk about safeguarding EU democracy and digital issues, I mean, what I found so interesting this year was how Chancellor Merz went out of his way when he got elected to sort of criticize, condemn top US administration officials' interference in German politics, and that being just as bad as Russian interference in Europe. In any case, the question, how far did Poland get under its presidency in pushing forwards measures aimed at protecting democracy? And of course, here I'm thinking a little bit about the Democracy Shield.
That's what I wanted to say, that probably you are meaning the Democracy Shield, and we just had a discussion a few weeks ago on this one, but what I wouldn't call the best news is that we're still inside of the EU. We have member states who are not so sure for the Democratic Shield, and if you can guess the names, they will be still the same of the member states. And I think the issue of disinformation, of what's going on online, that is super complicated here in Europe when we are the capital of democracy, of freedom, of free speech. And wherever we try to do something with disinformation or hate speech online, then there are people coming saying, hey, we have the free speech, so we could do whatever we want. But it's not the same, and that is really a great task ahead of us, that we need to translate to the citizens that it's not about the issue. If the free speech is not about disinformation, it's completely different two issues, opposite issues, I would even say. And in Poland, of course, we are very touched. We are one of the biggest hidden by Russian disinformation during every election process and so on. So we feel it enormously. And I think we cannot forget about the young generation and try to tell them and try them to understand that not everything they see online is true. And for them, it's like eye-opener. They were raised in the world of social media, and we were not. We got the social media at some point that we are adults, and the young people did not, and they believe that in everything that they see over there. And even yesterday, I had a meeting, just one more sentence. I had a meeting with the pupils, and I asked them, if on the street somebody will come to you and say, I will give you $1 million, please do this one and this one, would you believe? No, never. So why you do it online? Because it's on social media, there's only friends. So we really need to build some, among the citizens, some kind of understanding the problem. And this is also how the populists and the far rights are rising, because they're saying, we are trying to protect the freedom of speech. It's not about it.
I mean, this is critical. This is a very, very difficult problem when European regulation, which seems to make good sense, I think, is blocked by, for example, members of the current US administration, where they say, oh no, that's censorship. And this is a very difficult world that we're entering into. Marie, can I ask you, maybe what is the Democracy Shield, in as much as we know what it is at the moment, and what might the timeline for it be?
Well, we do not yet know much about the Democracy Shield. It is in a very early stage. The Commission is working on it, collecting good input at this stage. It is also something that we intend to discuss during our presidency. And let me just say that I think it's very important that we do take initiatives on the Democracy Shield, because the foundation for freedom of expression is information. And we do not have access to information if it's just on the social media, if it's algorithm that is controlling information. That means that I will see something, and Martin will see something else, and Maida will see something totally different. We will each live in our bubble. That is not information. We need to have access to the same information, not disinformation, not misinformation. This is something, and this is an area where you will hear me say more regulation, and probably the only area where you will hear me say more regulation.
I was going to point that out, actually, and ask you a follow-up question. We're talking about the Democracy Shield, which is yet more regulation, possibly, but let me ask you this. The Digital Services Act, which we already have on the books, the European Commission has not acted against X in particular yet. Should that have happened by now?
Being against X?
Well, actually using the Digital Services Act to, reach a conclusion in their investigations and maybe fine X and Elon Musk's companies if necessary.
True, and well, the Digital Service Act has many good tools in it. We should be better at implementing it,
Right.
And that is also something that we have to lift to have a better implementation. And I also think that we should advocate for more regulations because yes, the DSA is good. It has very many good provisions, and we should implement it. But we also should have better protection of minors. In Denmark, it's 50% of young people down to 10 years old, kids, that do have a social media account. Even though that the age limit is, 13 and 15, we should have age verification. That's something we should do in the DSA, or even verified profiles. That's something Martin would like to discuss as well. We should go further, because this is about protecting our democracy and protecting freedom of speech.
Before we go to verified profiles, I want to come back to James, and still on digital, and very much from the business perspective, and from the, as we address this theme of simplification. Let me put it this way. Is this really the right time for the EU to be rolling back laws, or in the case of the AI Act, actually putting it on hold, which is what we're talking about right now, sort of having a freeze? After all, the AI Act is meant to help with transparency and accountability in a sector that's moving blindingly fast. Spain, for one, has cautioned that simplification efforts by the EU must not lead to deregulation.
Finding the right balance between dealing with challenges that come up from constituents and ensuring that the European Union has both a single market, an effective one, and is sufficiently productive and competitive is a difficult one. You mentioned a minute ago the protection of minors, the DSA. The DSA and immediately the protection of minors debate is you talked about social media. We don't operate social media. We operate a retail store. You need to be specifically careful about what you do and don't sell to minors. It's a totally different challenge from the information they're exposed to, as it was under the DSA. It's an excellent example that the political debate needs to focus in a granular way on what is the problem and not throw everyone and every service into the same bucket. And that would be true on the DSA. It would be true on the protection of minors in the future. And it would be true on the AI Act. How you get the right balance between what is an actual problem already seen and what is something which is feared to be a problem is, of course, Europe's challenge. How much space do we give to innovation? The things that can happen really well and the things that could go wrong is a really difficult challenge. And I think we as innovators have an obligation to explain what we're going to do, but politicians also have an opportunity to ensure Europe is attracting the capital and the skills and those who want to build the future. We want to build the future. There are a lot of Europeans that want to build the future with us. We build the future in Gdansk. We have a very large lab working on AI, working on linguistics processing. We have a lot of suppliers in the Czech Republic working on aerospace. These are fields where we don't know the answer. And the reality to how we get enough capital in Europe, enough Europeans working for us, is making sure those who want to build it can build it. So if we get in their way too much unnecessarily, we will cause an undesirable problem.
And what do we gain from putting a freeze on the AI Act?
I'm not going to comment on putting a freeze on something. What I'm saying is the principle has to be that you regulate what you need to do and you don't go further than that. And I think the second thing is how high quality is the regulatory dialogue. We now have a number of new pieces of legislation with new regulatory authorities, whether in Brussels or elsewhere in the European Union, and they're dealing with novel problems. We don't know the answer. They don't know the answer. We know what the legislator has said, and it is vital that when we are looking at those, we don't go too far in locking down the future. So I don't know exactly what is the right balance. What I do know is too much prescription in what we're told to do and what we can build in the future will result in it being very difficult for it to be built here by us or many of the competitors who are deploying AI across Europe. So one other data point, there's a cost component to this. We have been feeling this, and we were curious as to how our customers felt about this. So we have been doing a survey this year. We identified that amongst many customers who are looking to deploy solutions like AI, 40% of their IT budget is going on compliance. 4 out of 10 euros is going on compliance. That's too much.
Okay, thank you Thank you. Martin, you wanted to come in on verification, just
Yes.
quickly on digital? Do you have a
Exactly.
quick thought on that?
We met with Marriott this morning and we have discussion about this item, and I think it might be the way how, if not eliminate, at least reduce the threats what we are facing at the moment, because actually we are really witnessing that hundreds of thousands of fake profiles, and they are able to completely change environment within few hours or days. Look at the Romanian presidential election. So this is something what make me really a little bit sad and afraid. And I think in case that every single social network, every single profile of the social network would have a individual identity, clear and exact, just one, then many of our troubles will be reduced, not eliminated, but reduced, because there will be, with the identification is connected also some kind of responsibility.
Great. This all sounds like good regulation, we'll call it.
Yeah, because we do have and we protect the freedom of speech, but on the other hand, should we protect this freedom for any single robot somewhere in Kremlin?
Martin, on on the issue of our strategic rivals and military rivals, tell me, particularly as Czechia has been at the forefront of trying to arm Ukraine with 155 millimeter shells, this was actually something that came from this country. Where do you see what can the EU do to make domestic military industries grow?
I think it's already started. There are many of new instructions or steps which are making easier to restart or start a new military production and defense production. And I think this is the proper way, because we have to understand right now with a new geopolitical situation with US that there is only Europe who could support and protect and defend Europe. We don't have any other solution. So from my point of view, because I am a Euro-federalist and I'm always pushing the Europe to be more and more closer collaborating, so for me it is a very strong signal or input and a message that really Europe needs to work together as much as possible, and not only within European Union. Now we are happy to see some kind of return, a comeback of the United Kingdom. Norway is dealing, Switzerland is dealing, and also we can count on maybe support from Australia, Canada, Japan, Korea. So this is a so-called coalition of willing, and I think we have to do our best to support Ukraine.
Well, what EU policies would you sort of envisage as being the very best? I mean, for example, if you, from a Euro-federalist point of view, in theory, you should be in favor of something like defense Eurobonds. So actually getting member states to throw money in a single pot and share it. But we are nowhere near that.
Exactly. I think there is a brand new situation and brand new message that right now Europe is withdrawing from this very strict budget policy, budget control, and now the door is open.
And how does that make you feel?
Yeah, I think it's right. We have to do that.
Okay.
Because, if we are not able to protect our countries, our freedom and democracy, then what to do? We don't need any other regulations. We need, first of all, we have to protect our countries, our people, our freedom and democracy and values, and then we can build up the competitiveness, etc.
And Maida, when Montenegro thinks about joining the EU, how much of that is about trade and prosperity and aspiration, and how much of it in 2025 is it about security?
Well, I think that everyone is motivated by the security situation, not because Montenegro is a part of Europe, even the fact we are not a member state of the European Union. But this is something that is really motivating, and why we are speaking now also about much more about enlargement, because of the security, because of the things what is the need of the European Union. And I think if we are speaking also about the other possibilities, I think that one of the good facilities countries is a growth plan for the Western Balkan. And if we are speaking about that, then we are coming to CRM and the critical raw material. If we are a candidate country, then we are with a gradual integration, what is happening not only with Montenegro, but also with some other candidate countries at this moment. I think with every step, with reforms that we are making, we are having also economic benefits from that.
So if I've heard you correctly there, that's very interesting, because when we talk about enlargement, we also, from a strategic perspective, should be talking about bringing in the Western Balkans, and not least Serbia, because it does have deposits of critical raw materials, which could help economic security in Europe. Have I got that right?
This is the plan of the growth plan, actually. This is the whole idea of the growth plan, to have this gradual integration of the Western Balkan countries. That's why we are very happy that Montenegro, Serbia, Albania, North Macedonia are joining SEPA. And these are all the benefits for our citizens. So if we are working on each regional cooperation and having one by one, for example, CRM, it's going to be the next. We are speaking about the green lanes. There are plenty of the pillars through the growth plan. These are all the benefits that will, before the full membership into the EU, the candidate countries can feel about. And this is also what makes European Union, more desirable by our citizens as well.
It's so interesting. It's like, once countries have joined the European Union, they're not so keen on doing mining on their own territory. So even if Serbia were to come in, I wonder if the mood would change. Magdalena, Mark Rutte, the NATO Secretary General, has said, when it comes to funding defense, it is up to the political authorities to find the means, either through higher taxes, through debt, or through savings elsewhere. Do you agree that reallocation of resources, reallocation of EU resources, is sort of the way to go? And there's also discussion right now, which I think began under your presidency over the last few months, that something like cohesion funds, which is usually to build hospitals and build roads and railway stations and airports, that perhaps it's time to repurpose that for defense.
You won't make me to say that we need less cohesion funds, since in Poland we are the best one to use cohesion funds, and we are still in favor that cohesion funds should be on the same level and should be governed by the regions. That's to say it at the beginning. But then, of course, we were the first country to ask if we can make a change in the Renew Europe funds, and we changed some money from cohesion there to the defense issues. And we are, as Poland, we are an example how much you can spend on defense. This year we will spend 4.73% of GDP for defense. It's the largest number in Europe. And this is also how we came to be the first army in Europe. So it has changed a lot in terms of Poland. But we said at the very beginning that we need to have new rules in EU, and this is something that Martin already mentioned, that this decision that the spending on defense, they are out of the procedure of counting the debt, it helped a lot. It opened the possibilities in other member states. Before this decision and before Trump coming into the White House, I was not sure that other member states are keen to spend more on defense. Those two factors combined meant other member states to rise the spending on defense.
This means, that particular rule means that EU member states can run larger deficits and not get into trouble with Eurozone authorities or with...
That's the main issue, and I'm happy it's not the best wording if you are just next to the war zone. But I remember 2014 when we as a Poland said that Putin won't stop on the Crimea, and we encouraged other member states to be ready. And we were not understood in Brussels. And after 10 years, finally, and during Polish presidency, that the issue that we put on the table, the security and more money on defense, it finally has some successes on this one. The issue of defense spending, the issue of SAFE initiative, and rebuilding the whole industry of defense capabilities, because that's also the case. For the last years, we were closing it. We were closing the factories for the defense capabilities. Now we have to reopen it. You were just a visitor in Poland 2 days ago.
At a very large shipyard.
Yeah, and a very large ship.
Where a corvette is being
the naval shipyard, and it has come back to Poland that we are doing it after a break. So it will happen in all member states, I hope.
Thank you. Marie, if we could pick up 2 points there. One, under your forthcoming presidency, where you have to be a fair broker and not necessarily take any sides, but what can you tell us about the idea of cohesion funds, these regional policy funds, being repurposed for defense? Where do you think that will go? And also, a forthcoming debate, these are usually the most vicious debates, about where to allocate money in the next EU budget. And these will be debates in your presidency.
Well, first of all, I think it's very limiting to say that funds can only come for taxation from debt or from savings. What about growing our economy? Making the whole economy bigger. We should have better competitiveness in Europe, investing in digitization in order to be more wealthy, to have a better economy, making reforms, making labor reforms. I think that is key to have more economy to invest in defense. When it comes to cohesion fund, we have to acknowledge that it takes up 1/3 of the budget, and we are in a situation right now where the world order is changing. Europe is not possible. It cannot defend itself. That must be our goal, that Europe can defend itself by 2030. So this is the ultimately goal, and then we have to focus on that. And status quo with the budget is not possible. We have to find the money for defense on the budget. And yes, cohesion funds should be used in a better manner in order to use it on these strategic goals for EU defense, energy infrastructure. I think that would be the best for Europe.
Super. Okay, great. And I just want to invite anybody else from the panel to come in on this last, almost existential question. Where do we find the money for defense? Can I invite anyone else to come in on that?
I would just add that the money for defense is not only money for defense capabilities as such. Here comes the whole issue of the dual use. So it won't be only money for defense capabilities. And here comes the cohesion funds, because we have to prepare everything, not only the weapons, but also the surrounding that we live in.
And James, one last word, because we've got 42 seconds left.
Growth and public-private partnerships, particularly in civilian resilience. There is a lot that the private sector can already offer efficiently.
Great. Well, thank you all for a superb panel. I really enjoyed that. And if I can just ask the audience to give you a round of applause, I think it's well deserved. Thank you very much. And so the GlobeSec Forum 2025 continues here at the Havel stage. Right after a short coffee break, the next session here is Becoming a Tech Continent, Europe.exe, now running at scale. There's some great guests. See you in a few minutes. Thank you.